Hi, so welcome back, and I just wanted to give you kind of a little bit of disclaimer about this video before I get started. So when I first started with the idea of this video, it came last year, and I started developing this video and I realized that it wasn't very YouTube friendly. So what I did is I did a whole different video about knowing your numbers, and that's kind of where the whole pricing thing came from. This is still not going to be a very good video for being YouTube friendly. I mean, you probably came here to be entertained, and this is going to be nothing but an information overload. So if you're very interested in knowing how to take care of your pricing, you might want to grab a notebook and take notes on this one, because this is going to be really jam-packed with educational stuff. Now, I also want to give a little disclaimer that I'm putting this video together as somebody who probably doesn't have good accounting methods. Not saying that I don't have good accounting methods. I'm saying that typically when you're new in business, you don't have the best accounting methods. So I'm taking it that you probably have a shoebox full of receipts and you're not doing monthly P&Ls and all kinds of other things that would make this streamline this process. So I'm breaking everything down into its little bittiest parts. However, I had a little bit of a technical glitch. So, and after the technical glitch, I realized that this was going to be like over an hour-long video originally, so I tried to kind of condense it down. So there might be some things I'm missing in this. If you notice anything that's missing, just kind of put it down in the comments. Let's share the information. If it gets really crazy, there's a lot of things, I'll probably just go ahead and redo the video. But I just wanted to put that out there so you know, but there should be enough information in here that wherever the gaps are, you should be able to use some critical thinking and fill them in. I really did want to get this video out. It was a real pain in the butt to try to get everything, all the information, everything together and get this video done. And so it's not exactly my best work, but in a sense, I didn't expect it to be my best work. So just, if you can bear with me on this one, if you're not that interested in, knowing your pricing, how to price, this is not necessarily probably the best video for you. I'll be honest with you on that one. So maybe you want to just scroll off to another video. So that being said, I just also want to tell you that this is basically for that beginner, that person that's like, I don't know how to price. I don't know how do I figure this out? Well, hopefully I can give you the tools that you can start piecing that together and figure out how you should be pricing. And that was the idea, is to make something for the newbie that really has no idea on what they're doing. So keep that in mind too if you're going to watch this video all the way through. And if you are a seasoned professional and I forgot something or I'm missing something, probably because of the technical glitch and because I didn't want this thing to run way too long, like I said, put down in the comments. Like I said, if I start missing too many things, I'll probably just reshoot the video and post a new video on this. But I'm going to be doing a lot of content that is important to get this information out there, that people are on page with what this information does, because this information is going to affect a lot of the other information that I'm going to be presenting about just our current economic issues and what's going on right now economically in the world and how that's going to affect our businesses. So that being said, let's get into the video. Welcome back. All right, and we can get into how to actually price for lawn care and snow removal. Like I said, I wanted to do this last year. I did one about knowing your numbers, making sure you know them. These are the numbers you got to know. Well, some of them at least. So this is not going to be a fully comprehensive idea. The problem is every single business is different. Everything you spend money on is going to be different and varied based on where your business is and what kind of things you have going on. Now, I'm going to try to take this as kind of a perspective that you're new, you're probably the first year in your business, and this is probably going to be helpful to know what kind of data you need to collect. But at the same time, until you're in year 2, you really can't really know your pricing very well. So that being said, let's get into the information here. So I have started up on the board here, and this is not, like I said, not a comprehensive list. Some of these things might not be on your radar, some of them might be. Gas, maintenance equipment, time, insurance, an owner's comp, disposables, and materials. So these are two separate things. Disposables I count for things like maybe like Weed Whip, that, or like for once I do dog poop, I have 10-gallon bags, or I'm sorry, 13-gallon bags that I use once and I have to constantly replenish, or Weed Whip that you constantly have to replenish. That's what I call disposables. Materials are going to be more things like salt and de-icing materials, or grass seed, or things like that, dirt that you might have to haul in and is going to stay there on the customer's property. Business profits, taxes, admin costs, web page. Again, this list can go on and on and on and on. However, this is just kind of gives you a start of just some of the things, and we're not even going to go through all of these things when we talk about it. We're going to go through some of the main features that I know are pretty much on everybody's radar. Things like gas, maintenance, and equipment are going to be in everybody's business. So we're gonna, and I put gas on top too, because that's probably one of your biggest costs, and we need to figure out how much gas we're using. So when we deal with gas or fuel, if you're using diesel, whatever the case may be, there's a couple things you need to do. You have to look at the gas you're using in the equipment, and you have to look at what you're using in your vehicle. So if you're dealing with mowing, your vehicle is going to be basically your transportation to get from point A to point B, and it becomes a pretty easy kind of a way to do that. When it becomes snow removal, your gas and everything else, your truck, might actually be part of the equipment. But we're going to signify that the truck is something different than the equipment. Both cases. So how do we figure out how much gas what we're using in the equipment? This is usually how I would do it. I look up some information, figure out how much gas is held in the gas tank of the equipment. Most equipment is usually roughly about a gallon if it's smaller, but it's usually comes into a gallon or a gallon and a half, or 2 gallons, 2.5. You know, it's going to be usually in a half-gallon increments. But let's say our equipment uses 1 gallon. I'm going to use that equipment on every single property until I run out. I then know I've used a gallon of gas, and then I'm going to count how many properties I used that gallon of gas on. And that will give me an average on how much gas I'm using per gallon on a particular property. So let's say I have a gallon gas tank, and I get to use it on 3 properties. And I'm just pulling numbers out of my butt here. Alright? I can do a better 3 than that. Maybe not. Alright, tree. We got tree. Tree properties. So now, actually, you know what? I don't want to do tree. We're going to do 4, because we're going to keep the numbers simple. So I know 4. So I know I'm using a 1/4 gallon of gas on every single property. Now, what I want to do is I have to figure out how much my gas price is going to be. Now, here's the problem with gas. It goes like this, right? They'll go up and they'll go down. They'll go up and they'll go down. So how do you know how much? And this is, depending on what area you're in, it's going to be different. Now, gas is typically, I'm in the Chicago area, gas is pretty darn high. So what I do is I sit there and I look at what is the average gas price in my area throughout the past year. I'm sure you fueled up your vehicle. You could pretty much make a pretty good guesstimate, and then you want to go up. So for me, when I deal with gas, I deal with $5 per gallon. Now, if you're not in the U.S. and you're using liters, you're going to want to change that, obviously. But so that's what I mark as how much a gallon of gas costs. If I look at now, gas prices are pretty low, but they're almost like $4 a gallon, and we got this crazy little tax in Illinois that twice a year it goes up by the rate of inflation. So gas prices are just steadily going up, up, up. Anyhow, so I'm always looking at gas at being $5 a gallon. So let me get my trusty calculator out here because my math not so good. Alright, so if we got $5 divided by 4, it costs me $1.25 to do one property for the equipment that I'm using. Now my truck. This is something that gets a little bit trickier because what you're going to actually be looking at more is miles per gallon. Again, if you're not in the US, it's probably miles per liter, but I'm in the US, so we're going to use miles per gallon. How do we factor miles per gallon? Well, there's an old-fashioned way that you can do between fill-ups by figuring out how much gas that you use at a particular time and how many miles that you've driven, and you record it in a little book. I haven't done it since I was like in high school and first started driving, but there is ways to do it. Go online, you can look it up, I'm sure it's there if you want to do it that way. However, there's a couple other ways. Most vehicles nowadays, I know mine does, usually has some kind of monitor that you could reset, and I just reset it at the beginning of the day whenever I'm going out to work, and then look at the end to see how many miles per gallon I used on average while I was out, because that's what you're actually looking for, is an average of miles per gallon. If you don't have either one of those and you want to get fancy tech, you can get one of these things. This is an Xtool. I don't really like this particular model, but this is an OBD2 reader. It's Bluetooth, connects to my phone. I can leave this plugged in and it will give me the miles per gallon of my vehicle. I can set it up to give me average miles per gallon, that kind of thing. Like I said, Xtool is not my favorite. You can usually get those for like 10, 15, maybe 20 bucks on Amazon or wherever you like to buy your OBD2 readers. So, but that will give you that data. One of the things you don't want to use is those devices that say they're going to give you better gas mileage, because they send a signal back. This just reads. That sends a signal back into the PCM, and you don't want that happening while you're driving, because you'll fry your computer in your truck. You don't want to do that. Trust me, they're expensive. I haven't had to replace one of those in years, but they're expensive. The one I did have to replace was expensive. And that was like in the 90s. And they're a lot fancier now. So you're going to get your miles per gallon in your truck. So depending on whether I'm mowing or doing snow removal, it's going to be different. Because my miles per gallon would be about 8 to 10 doing snow. My miles per gallon is roughly about, doing city with or without my trailer, is roughly about 12 miles per gallon doing mowing. Now, again, this is to give you some rough about what we're going to use, because the 10 miles per gallon, because we want nice round numbers. Now, you should be recording your mileage, because for tax purposes, you can write your mileage off. You get something like 16 cents a mile. Even if you are trying to claim your truck as a business truck, it's solely for business use, and you can write off all of your maintenance and everything, which I would recommend doing if you can. But typically most of us, especially if you're a solo operator just starting off, you're going to be using your vehicle for personal use, so you're going to have to probably take the mileage discount and record your mileage in a little book and write it down and figure it out and everything else. So you'll have your mileage for when you've done your job. And you figure out that mileage. If you know you're getting 10 miles per gallon and you've driven, let's say 20 miles, we know we have used 2 gallons of gas. Make it a Q here. At $5 a gallon, so now we know we need to charge the customer. We know that we've done in our day of 4, that we spent $10 and we've done 4 jobs. Now what we're going to do is we're actually just going to average this out. So what we're going to charge for the customer on each one is going to be $5 a gallon. I know my dollar signs are funky. It's weird when you're writing sideways. So that's our charge per customer for gas in the truck, and the price per is $1.25. So we're now charging our customer $5 plus $1.25. Now, that's just one number. We have to go through all of these different things. Now, some of these things are best to do per season or by month or something in a longer interval, like maintenance. But The best way to figure that out is your receipts. Hopefully you're saving receipts, even if they're sitting in a shoebox. You can go through the shoebox and figure that out. And pull all those receipts out and figure out how much you're spending on maintenance. And then you take that, you divide that by the number of properties you do in a season or whatever, and then you can get a number of maintenance. So you figure out it's costing you $5 worth of maintenance. Again, I'm just making a number up here for expediency to charge the customer. 6. So we're at 11.25. Equipment. You want to charge your customer for the use of the equipment. It doesn't matter if the equipment's bought and paid for. It doesn't matter if you got the equipment for free. You want to charge your customer for the use of that equipment. And there's a couple reasons why. Number one, eventually that equipment's going to get old and you're going to want to replace it. And even you're going to need to get a loan out for equipment, or you're going to be able to pay for it outright. Either way, even if you get a loan, you're going to want a down payment on that equipment. And you want to shove that equipment money away so that when it comes time to replace it or buy new equipment because you want to expand, you have the money to do that. Now, the way that you would do this is through depreciation. What you could do is, if you have a used piece of equipment, you could probably depreciate that over 3 years and try to average that out to figure out how much it's going to cost per property, and go ahead and depreciate the equipment that way. Or you can look at that piece of equipment brand new and go 5 to 7 years and figure out how much it would cost. So if you have $10,000 for a mower, divide that by 5, as that's how long you plan on that piece of equipment lasting, and then that'll give you how much that piece of equipment would cost you for the year. And then you can divide that by 12 or whatever, and then divide that by the number of properties, and that'll tell you, on average, how much that piece you should be charging that customer for that piece of equipment. We're going to throw a number out there, because I love throwing numbers out there, of $5 a property. So now we're up to $16.25 that we need to charge the customer. Time. This is really important, because we're talking about man hours. Let me go ahead. I'll clear off my gas information here, and we'll talk man hours. So you might be like, well, how much do I charge per man hour? That's completely up to you, but here's the thing. We talk about per man hour. Okay, this has to deal with, let's say I go up and I pull up for a mowing job as a solo operator. I'm working that job and it takes me 30 minutes. If you have crews and you have 2 guys pull up that job, it might take them 15 minutes. Because there's 1 guy working this in 30 minutes, you would charge them for the 30 minutes. Because there's 2 guys, you multiply that by 2, so it would actually be 30 minutes to do the job. And that's how you would figure out kind of your man hour rate. So how do you figure out how much you should be charging for per man hour when you don't have any staff? Because your man hour rate is actually going to be different than the wage that you would pay that employee, because you have payroll taxes, you have things like workers' comp that all rolled into that employee that cost you money. And so your man hours are actually going to be more than you would pay that employee. So what you would do for that particular factor is you want to try to factor that in right away. You want to be ahead of the game on that, not behind, because if you have to hire an employee, you want to make sure that all you have to do is hire that employee, and the only money that you're going to lose out on is your time. And you're not going to be losing out on anything else. So how do you figure that out? Well, there's not really a very cut and dry way, because it's different for everybody, once again. But to give you kind of a rough estimate on how to figure that out, first thing you want to do is go on Indeed or whatever other site is they use for hiring and look for that job. Look for, lawn care professional or mowing guy or whatever, however it's listed, or snowplow guy. Now, if you're dealing with snowplow, I just looked this up recently. It's about $31 an hour to pay someone to plow snow in my area. Because of expediency, because I like nice round numbers here, and we're just making up numbers, we're going to call that $30 an hour. All right, so we're paying them $30 an hour. And now this is one of the things you got to look at too. At the end of the season and everything, when you're looking at what you're charging, if you are not taking home at least $30 an hour, and that's what their going rate is in your area for snow plowing or whatever the job is, guess what? Don't go into business unless you're willing to raise your prices to make sure that you're making at least $30 an hour, because otherwise, just get the job and not have to mess with all the other stuff. So this is where I see a lot of guys go wrong in their charging, is that they're working for so much less than they could just getting a job and working for someone else. You want to at least be making, at the end of the day, the same amount of money. So we're going to go with $30 an hour as being that rate. Now, chances are what you probably want to do, whatever that rate is, at least double it. Because like I said, we got the payroll taxes. Even though you may be a solo operator and not having to pay all of these extra things, you want to at least double that amount. So when you do hire somebody, that stuff is already covered. And so we're going to say that our time is going to be $60 a man hour. So I have my job, and we're going to say that roughly, on estimate, a job takes us 30 minutes. So our price per man hour at 30 minutes, that's half an hour, is going to be $30. Man, this customer's going to get so screwed. So that's how you would figure out your man hour per se. Now, like I said, you want to do at least double, but you probably actually want to go higher than that. Realistically, if you want to be around probably about $75 to $80 per man hour on the low end, you might even... Alright, so I got through my whole video, looked at the camera, and realized it shut off in the middle of it. So when I looked at it, it said that we were talking about time and man hours. And I think I pretty much covered that whole thing. We're at 46.25. Now, what I wanted to do was I pulled up, next we have insurance. We're going to get the owner's comp, business profits, and taxes. A lot of this other stuff I took off just because I'm trying to give you an overview. You're going to want to figure out and factor all that out. But insurance. So when we get into insurance, and I'm saying we got 4 properties in a month, I figured out that each property then, with at least what I pay for insurance on my vehicles and liability, is about $150 per property. So you can extrapolate the math and figure that out later if you like, to figure out how much I'm paying per month for insurance. It's really easy. It's 150 times 4 roughly. I rounded it up, but so to make some nice easy numbers, so we're at $196.25 for our service. I told you this customer is getting screwed. We need to find more customers. That's what we need to do so we can make these numbers lower. So we then need to add in an owner's comp. So how much do you charge for an owner's comp? And this is money that you are going to pay yourself as an owner. This is different than the money that you're paying yourself as the time. This is what you're paying yourself to run the business. This is what you're paying yourself to do the work. And again, I'm taking this as solo operator. So these are two different roles, and you get 2 different wage paychecks for them, I guess you can say. Your owner's comp is usually around somewhere between 10 to 15%, is usually the pretty average. You can make it whatever the heck you want. But if we do 10%, it roughly equals out to, on this job of $200, to be about 20 bucks. So we're going to add that to what we need to charge the customer. And then business profits. So again, this is probably going to be about 10 to 15% of profits for the business. Business profits get really hairy because you can end up spending those to cover other things if you need to. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you want to say that your business made this much, and if you're a solo operator, your business profits, they go to you. So you're probably going to want to do somewhere, again, between 10 to 15%. And if we do 10%, that puts it right around $20, like the owner's count. Now we need to deal with taxes. You do want to make sure that you're covered for your taxes. I like to add the taxes onto the actual cost of the service, which is going to be about 15%. And the reason why I do 15%, you actually want to do 20% for taxes. But you have all these costs to account for to kind of offset those things. So I usually do 15%, but for this, we're going to do a full 20% because it gives us some nice round numbers of $40. So at the end of the day, when we do all of this math, we have 25 cents carry down the 6, 8 plus 9, so that's 17, carry the 1. That is how much we're charging our customer for whatever said service this is. Because we've factored out all of our costs, we brought in all of our profits. Again, what we really need to do is get more customers because our averages are really way off, only having four services in a month. Come on. But you get the rough idea. This is probably, now when you start doing these numbers like with gas and things like that, you might end up in pennies. You want to add those pennies. I think when I factored this out, the first year that I did this with my little push mower, my SUV, without a trailer for most of the year, I figured out it cost me this much to actually do a service. Now, that doesn't include time. That doesn't include the owner's comp, the insurance. Actually was running out. I started without insurance, but so that insurance wasn't in there. But that counted for equipment, maintenance, and gas costs. I didn't have an owner's comp in there. I didn't have a business profit or anything like that. I was charging $25 to $35 per property to take care of that. So as you can see, I'm still at the end of that half an hour, because actually that first year they were taking me about a half an hour. I was dealing with a push mower, maybe even sometimes longer. So for a half an hour, I'm making 20 bucks an hour. It's actually not bad. But again, if I go into my local area and look at how much money I'm making in time, I'm making about $20 an hour. I'm not paying myself then to run the business. I might as well just go ahead and get the job at $20 an hour, or I need to raise my rates. And I went and I raised my rates. So this will tell you why basically, you ask the question, how much should I charge? And you're expecting somebody to say, oh yeah, you should go ahead and just charge $50 a lawn. But nobody can say, everybody's like, I can't tell you how much to charge because they don't have all of this information. $50 a lawn might actually put you in the hole. Who knows? It might give you extreme profits. Nobody can tell you because they don't have all of this information. Chances are probably you don't either. So where do you find this information? Well, like we were talking with the miles per gallon, you should be recording your mileage for tax purposes. You get 16 cents a gallon. Chances are if you're a solo operator, you're using your truck for personal as well as business, and that's about the best you're going to do. Now, granted, it costs you more than 16 cents a gallon, or 16 cents a mile, as you'll figure out, especially if you're doing snow plowing, in just fuel alone. But you got to figure out what your maintenance costs are. If your machines are older, this number is probably going to be higher. Your equipment costs. If your machines are older, this number is probably going to be a little lower. You know, what your hourly rate is. You have to figure that out and factor that out and kind of guesstimate that yourself. Your insurance costs, that's going to be pretty straightforward. Your insurance company will tell you that. And then dealing with your owner's comp, your business profit, and your taxes, those are all based on percentages. So, I mean, those are going to be your key things. Like I said, there's a lot longer of a list of everything. You want to account for everything that you spend money on. You get into bigger things, you're going to need to deal with rent on space. Maybe if you're renting a storage unit or something of that nature. If you're not renting a storage unit and you're using your own garage, you could just say, forget it. Or you could be charging yourself rent on your own garage, if that makes sense to you. Charging the business rent for the use of your garage. So, you know, admin costs, all those admin stuff, you might be doing it, but you should be getting paid for that too. So these are all things that you need to factor, and why nobody can just throw out a number and say, this is what you should charge. It's going to be different for everything else, because ultimately when you deal with lawn care or snow removal, all of the money that goes into the business, that comes from the business, is all going to be from those services. So you got to account for everything. Now, when you move on a little bit further and you actually get into some proper accounting methods, you'll have things called debits and credits. And what goes under debits? This is money going out. And with credits, it's money going in. And all you got to do is look at your accounting sheet, look at money going out, and then figure out the average number based on how many services you did, and figure that out, and that number will pop right up for you and populate. Then all you need to do is add your 10% business owner's comp, your business profit, and your taxes, and you're done. Basically, knowing how much you should charge per service on average. Now, some services are going to be bigger and smaller than others. So it's an average still that you're figuring out based on how much you should actually end up having to charge. Obviously, I charge more for a 3-car driveway than I do a 2-car driveway. To be honest with you, the costs of those are probably not very different, but till you get into time. And that's where the big difference comes in with those. But until you get into standard accounting methods, you're going to have to try to figure this out. You're going to have to go through the shoe boxes of receipts that you should be saving so you can write stuff on your taxes and extrapolate all of that information to kind of figure out how much you should be charging. You might need to go into your Amazon purchase list and figure out the receipts from there, and just pull all of these things, all this information that you can from wherever. If you have a CRM and you're keeping that up to date and you're actually recording all your services, the credits area should be really easy for you, as well as getting all that customer information that you need per service. And as far as if you're using probably a free one, you're probably not tracking your time. That's something you're going to have to do. Typically what I would just do is go ahead, look at my, pull my phone out, look at the time I started at, pull my phone out when I get done, look at the time I ended at, figure out how long I spent there, and just kind of average out based on the size of the property. So that's basically pricing in a nutshell. There's a lot of different things, a lot of moving parts in all of this. And I mean, this is why nobody can just tell you, you should charge this or you should charge that. Because if you don't have all this information, you probably can't even tell you how much you should charge. So that being said, I wanted to do this video last year and realized it just was not YouTube friendly. So, and you probably figured out why. But I think this is really important information to get out there, and that everybody needs to understand. Hey, maybe you just want to bookmark this video so the next time you hear somebody ask a question about how much should I charge, you could just link the video or send them the video or something like that. Because they need to understand that this is not such a cut and dry information. Hopefully this has helped a lot of people. And, well, on that basis, I'll see you next time.